All right, welcome to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson, your host for today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Variant O'Connor. Tim, you with me?
I'm here, Kevin. I'm here.
You're here.
And once again, I'm like, am I with you? I don't know.
Yeah.
Whoa, what happened?
In a hotel room, right? And
Oh
so
my
today,
God.
as y'all can see, we
Yeah.
also.
Am I here?
Oh, did we lose you, Tim? Did we lose me?
I think I'm here.
Okay.
Oh,
Our
this
guest
is
for
driving me
today,
crazy.
Lars, is Lars Mapstead is also with us, and we're going to give you a nice, proper introduction. When we lead into the show. He's a libertarian candidate for president. So Tim and I got a bunch of stuff. Lars is with us for the first segment, but we got a bunch of stuff for y'all today. As usual, we got this and then 10 other topics that we're probably not even going to get to. Steel tariffs and the new report on police shootings of dogs in Rochester. We got I don't know, all sorts of stuff. So
They seem to not be having very much success with sorry. They seem to be not having very much success with stopping carjacking, but they seem to be doing all right shooting dogs.
Car theft in Rochester up 355%. So that's the number one in the nation for that. So we're going to talk about that, whether or not we can do anything about it. I know folks want to talk about bail reform. My local city council person says the youth programs are underfunded. So we'll talk about those later in the show too. But of course, we want to make sure that we talk about there is a presidential election that is starting to heat up, and it's not just amongst the Republicans. People only just want to talk about the Trump and the DeSantis stuff. We're going to talk about the Libertarian race for the presidential nomination as well. That's the way I have Lars on today. So we're going to get to the show in just a few minutes, and of course, because we're live, because we are on the Kevin Wilson pages, the Tim O'Connor pages, all the Free Solution pages, all those. Make sure you jump in with your questions and comments at any part of the show, but especially while Lars is here. We're going to go live in 5 seconds.
Now, an hour of clarity for exhausted people of our nation mired in toxic partisanship. Left versus right, us versus them. While we pay to keep our politicians fighting, how do we, the people, rise up and solve the great challenges of our time? We do it by embracing freedom and liberty. There may be no such thing as a free lunch, but this hour is as close as it gets. Welcome to A Free Solution.
All right, welcome to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson, your host for today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Variant O'Connor. And he's with us, I swear. He's moving a little bit slower today, but Tim, the Freedom Variant O'Connor, is in fact with us. Thanks for joining us here on A Free Solution, wherever you're listening, whether you're listening on WYSL on the Thursday evening broadcast or the live broadcast on a Free Solution Facebook page, YouTube channel, the Kevin Wilson pages, the Tim O'Connor pages, wherever you are today. Appreciate y'all being here. And we have a guest this show as well. We have Lars Mapstead, who is a candidate running for the Libertarian nomination for president. Lars, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me. I liked your introduction. It kind of resonated with exactly why I'm running for president.
Fantastic. Well, let's start with that. Why are you running for president?
Yeah, I was watching in the riots happen, right? The George Floyd riots across the country, and the cities were burning across the country. And I realized there was a lot of pissed off people. And then I watched the January 6th activities, and I realized there was a lot of pissed off people. And I realized that it didn't matter if you were on the left or the right. Everybody in America is angry right now. And all my friends are all pissed off, and they're all shouting down and yelling at each other about how things are broken and how the system is rigged against everybody. And I just realized there's nobody coming out with good solutions to fix these problems, that they just keep pointing the fingers at each other, and the problems just keep getting worse. And we keep electing the same cycle over and over again and expecting different results. And people are sick and tired of being sick and tired. They want something different. And so I just couldn't sit idly by anymore. I had to come in and try to unrig the system. And the more I got into running for president, the more I realized that the system is just completely rigged from the very foundation, from the very basic. Our whole voting system is rigged against us, right? And how can we have a free and fair republic if the foundation that we're built on is not trustworthy, right? And so that's kind of become my mission, is to unrig the system. And when I say that the system is rigged, I'm sure something pops into your minds and something pops into your listeners' minds, because the system is rigged against everybody in some way, shape, or form, right? And we need to get that system unrigged. We got to take away the power from the politicians and give it back to the people where it belongs, because the politicians work for us. We don't work for the politicians.
Right on. All right. I mean, that's a lofty goal. Like, I'm mad. Tim's mad. A lot of people are mad. It's a tough thing to tackle. So how are you going to be able to do that, though? Specifically, tell us a little bit more about your background, and how are you going to make an impact and help us get out of the doom cycle that we're in, the bipartisan doom cycle that we have right now, that's kind of destroying our politics and culture in some ways in the United States.
Yeah. So I grew up really poor. I grew up, in fact, with no electricity and an outhouse. Okay. And somewhere along the way, I discovered the internet and computers, and that I had a knack for marketing. And so I went literally from no electricity to becoming a computer guy. Right. And I was just happened to be in the right place at the right time when the internet came along. And I started a whole bunch of internet companies, over a couple decades. And that kind of culminated with a company called Friend Finder Networks, which is large dating websites that people use to find husbands and wives and various, partners and that sort of thing. And so I ended up selling that company for, a big chunk of money. We were doing $350 million a year in sales and had 600 or so employees. And so that's sort of a little bit about my background. And I just one of the things that I found as running for president as a libertarian was that the whole system is rigged against anybody that doesn't have an R or a D next to their name has a really hard time of even getting on the ballot, right? And all my life, it seemed like the only choices I had for president was Clinton or Bush, Clinton or Bush, Clinton or Bush. And I even remember I thought it was going to be Hillary Clinton versus Jeb Bush. That's how cynical I had become, right? I was like, and I was like, I realized somewhere along the way that we don't have choice. We have the illusion of choice, that these people are handpicked for us before we ever get to the voting booth, right? The fact that we might have Donald Trump and Joe Biden again as the top two candidates for us to vote for should make everybody wake up and take notice and say something isn't right, because nobody likes these guys, right? They're literally voting for them because they're afraid the other guy is going to win. And that shouldn't be the way we vote in America. We should be voting on principle. We should be voting for things that make our lives better. And like I said, it's just the illusion of choice. And I want to kind of end that. And part of that is fixing our rigged election system. There's a whole bunch of things like ending gerrymandering. I don't think we should have primaries. Right now, the primaries, basically the public pays for the Democrats and the Republicans primary. Okay. Mm-hmm. But like 35 or 40% of Americans aren't Democrat or Republican. They're independent or third party. So why, as a taxpayer, do we have to pay for these private corporations' primary system, right? I feel like it should be open primaries and that we should have a lot of choices. I'm for getting a lot more choice on the ballot. And one of those things that does that is a thing called ranked choice voting, which has been being adopted in various states. Oregon, Alaska, and Maine all have ranked choice voting, and a lot of cities and counties and states are like looking to implement that. And that just opens the playing field up so that we don't only have two choices when it comes to election day in November.
Real quick, can you explain what ranked choice voting is in case any of our listeners haven't heard of it?
Yeah. So essentially right now we have voting where you just basically vote for one guy, and whoever gets to 51%. Of course, the electoral vote is if whoever gets to 270 wins, right? But with ranked choice voting, you get to pick your first person, and then you get to pick a second person and a third person, and so on and so forth. And essentially, what happens is it allows for people to pick the one that everybody wants, not necessarily the one that is like the top of the line. Because right now you could have a situation where only like 25% of the people vote for somebody and they win, right? And we want to have a system where at least 51% of the people are voting in order to select who's going to be. Otherwise, you're just allowing a small group of people to run roughshod over the rest of the people.
That's right. Yeah. Plurality rule or first past the post voting is what we have. It's single member districts in most places. So yeah, you don't need doesn't need a majority of folks to at least say like, yeah, it's okay. Even if that guy's my third choice, like, no, it can be a small minority of folks who even bother to show up and vote. Cause again, there's also folks who just don't bother because they don't think they have any choices on the ballot. And specifically, and now I get to one of these questions that we got in New York State, we have some unique challenges with ballot access. We had ballot access after Larry Sharpe did great in the 2018 election. Yep. And then they switched the rules on us. Andrew Cuomo said, well, we're going to do some ballot reform stuff, campaign finance reform. And now they raised the threshold and made the qualifications every 2 years and increased the threshold for how many votes we need to get to stay on the ballot. And to that end, one of the concerns I know libertarians in New York State have, this is from Sean Hannon out in the Syracuse area, who's a party leader out that way, says in New York State, we need 130,000 presidential votes to regain ballot access. Do you have a get out the vote plan to help secure ballot access in states like New York?
Yeah, I'm literally working with Larry Sharpe on gaining ballot access in New York. I donated. He had a fundraiser a little bit back, and I helped donate to that and help raise money for that. I did a matching contribution. Yeah, ballot access is ridiculous. I feel like that's one of the big ways that the system is rigged, right? Why should a Democrat or Republican have a different rules than I do or some other person to get on the ballot, right? Like, I think it should be equal across the board. Whatever the rule is for the Democrat and the Republican, it should be the same for an independent candidate or a third party candidate. There shouldn't be different rules for different groups of people. That is the definition of a rigged system. 2 tiers of levels of activity, different for the people who are in power than the ones who are not. And that is exactly the kind of system that I want to unrig.
Right on. All right. So thanks for that answer. And Tim, I want to give you a chance to jump in. I don't know if you're doing all right here, but feel free to jump in anytime. Otherwise, I'm going to just keep rattling off questions.
Yeah. Is my mic working, guys? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, we're hearing you, Tim.
Yeah.
Yeah, go for it.
All right. So, Lars, my question would be, what's your specific plan to bring this concept to fruition? Like, we don't have answers. We fought this battle. We lost. What are you going to do different than everybody else has already done?
Yeah. Well, of course, it's all very challenging as an independent third-party candidate, right, to make effective change. But one of the things that I'm working on right now is winning an electoral vote. Okay. It hasn't been done for the Libertarian Party since 1972, and that was a rogue elector. So no one's really ever won an electoral vote as a Libertarian. And I'm a marketing guy. I have like 25 million fans on different pages on Facebook. That's what I do. That's like, I'm a social media guy, right? And I started looking around and I realized that there's a couple of states that split up their electoral vote. And I realized that those electoral votes are represented by only 600,000 people. Okay. And in Riverside County, we had Jeff Hewitt got elected. And he represented a couple million people in Riverside County. So I know that it's possible to win and with that size of an election. And I think that it's totally doable. So what I want to do is put libertarians on the map in 2024, show that we are a political party that can, move and shake, right? And that we need to be taken seriously. So I'm trying to push us forward so that we can have more voice in the system. And then I'm trying to just educate people on this whole rigged system. Like, for instance, I live in California, and California, because we have winner take all states where essentially whoever gets 51% of the vote in the state, all the electors go to that winner, right? So 49% of the people are disenfranchised, right? In California, half the state is red and half the state is blue, but there's a lot more blue people than there are red people, right? So all the people who vote red, their vote doesn't matter. The only people whose vote matters in America is people who live in a battleground state. Right. And so there's basically 7 states. If you don't live in one of those states, your vote for president essentially doesn't matter. Right. And so what I'm looking at, proportional representation, where we essentially allow for each group, each area to vote And they do that in Maine as an example, right? They have two congressional districts and they break it up. And so they have kind of a red district and a blue district, and they each get a say in where their electoral vote goes. And I think that is something that could be implemented across America that would give voice back to people, because there's people that just feel like their voice doesn't matter, their vote doesn't matter, they're disenfranchised, and so they don't even bother to show up at the polls, right? And I think that's a disservice to America. People should feel like they have buy-in to the system and that they're part of the system and that they can affect change. Because if you don't feel that, you feel disillusioned and you feel defeated, right? And so you don't even bother to try to change things.
Yeah, and you end up with apathy, and then the bureaucrats and the politicians are able to just keep doing whatever they do without accountability. That's how
Exactly.
it goes. And all right, so to that, shifting a little bit though, I want to get into some of the issues. Like, much of our WYSL audience, I would say they run fairly conservative. They're folks who often vote Republican, conservative party. Sometimes they'll switch ticket, but or split ticket, but often they tend to vote in that direction. Why should they consider someone like you, should you get the Libertarian nomination for president and be on the ballot in 2024?
Yeah. Well, I mean, New York is exactly like California, right? In New York, if you're a Republican, your vote essentially doesn't matter for president, because it's going to be voting blue no matter what, right? The Democrats, it's going to go blue. And I have this thing I say, imagine on election night, they're going across the map and California is blue, Texas is red, Florida is red, New York's blue. And then they're like, what is this gold on the map? What the hell is this? And imagine if we were the deciding factor on election night and we caused the election to go one way or another, right? Their minds would just explode and they would be talking about all the time. But so if you're sick and tired of the system the way that it is, and you're a Republican living in a blue state where your vote essentially doesn't matter, you should vote for a Libertarian or a third party just to send a message that we're fed up with the system. We're fed up with the way the system is rigged, right? It just doesn't matter how you vote, unfortunately, right? Unless you live in one of these few battleground states. And I think that's a rigged system, and it's horrible for America. It's horrible for the people.
Yeah, right on. Tim, giving you another shot to ask a question, man.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Yeah, no, Lars, I couldn't agree more. I'm concerned that people are too jaded and too invested in this binary decision making that we've got going on. We've tried to persuade them, we've cajoled them, we've talked to them, we've begged them, we've pleaded with them. What's the trick here? What's going to make this change? I know it's a tough question. I'm pulling for you, but it's a question I got to ask.
I think most people don't realize that their vote kind of doesn't matter, right? And that's why I'm just trying to educate people that, like, literally, I'm sure there's people in New York that are like, I'm voting for Trump, I'm voting for DeSantis, I'm voting for whoever the red guy is, because we can't let Joe Biden get another term, right? I'm certain that there's people like that. And what I'm telling you is, if you live in New York and you're a red voter, your vote doesn't matter, because 100% of the electoral votes are going to go to the blue candidate, right? That's it. And so it really, your vote is essentially thrown away unless you live in one of these 7 states, right? So my message is, if you ever want to get out of this system that we're in, you have to vote differently and send a message to Washington that we're done. We're done playing this game. We're done playing the duopoly. And I think there's a lot of people that vote red and blue who feel like even their own party isn't representing them, but they just don't want to let the other guy in. And that's what they're voting against. Yeah. They're not voting for their party to do something good for them. They're just trying to keep the other guy out. And that's no way to live, right? And that's no way to push America forward. We have to come with better principled candidates, with better messaging that care for working people, that care. Like, these guys don't care. They're elites of Washington, essentially. And they just care about getting reelected and getting more donor money. And their actions show that they don't care. There's a few principled people in Congress, but they're relatively few, right? And I think we need to change this. That you look, Congress has like a 20% approval rating and an 80% reelection rate. And you have to think, why is that, right? And the reason is because the system is rigged. Right? You're only getting 2 choices every time, right? And so you're not going to choose the other side. And it's not like they're running people against their own party. There's never like 5 Democrats or 5 Republicans running for Congress. Whoever is the person that's in there as the incumbent, they never get challenged, right? So I'm a big fan of term limits. I want to get all these corrupt career politicians out. Politicians, like, I went to Independence Hall one year, and I was taking a tour of Independence Hall in the first Congress. And the woman that giving the tour said, look, the people that were here, the first 30 people that were here, they all had jobs, and they came here for a few months, and then they went back home because this was a service position, right? Congress is a service position. It's not a career. And we need to get back to that principle because they work for us, right? And that's not how it's working right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you provide no incentive for them to change, you keep voting for them no matter what, and they know you're going to keep voting for them no matter what. Yep. What's the incentive to change? Why would they? You're going to keep doing it. Why would they change a system that's working for them? Now, we only have a couple minutes left, but I want to give you an opportunity to say, like, let's say hypothetically you do well, you make an impact. What is the best hopeful outcome that you can see at the end of the 2024 election?
Well, I'd like to win a couple electoral votes. I think that would be amazing. And I'd like, how I found that I was a libertarian was I took a quiz, an online political quiz, and it said I was a libertarian. I never felt like I belonged to any party. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is the thing. And then I was like, what's a libertarian? I had voted for Ron Paul, but I didn't realize he was a libertarian, right? And so I literally had to Google what is a libertarian. And after I Googled it and I started reading about it, I was like, oh my goodness, this is me. This is who I am. So a victory for me would be every American would Google what is a libertarian, check it out, and see if it applies to you. And if it does, join up and let's push this movement forward for a freer America, a less authoritarian America. Only you know how to live your life way better than anybody else. And the government should not be trying to run your life. They try to micromanage everything about your life. And I just want to live free with the least amount of government intrusion in my life as possible. And that to me is what a libertarian is.
All right, right on. All right, Lars Mapstead, who's one of the libertarian candidates trying to get the Libertarian Party nomination for president. Lars, 30 seconds. Where can people find you, learn more about your campaign?
Yep. Lars24.com. On Facebook, I'm Lars for President, and on Twitter, I'm Libertarian Lars.
All right, right on. All right, Lars Mapstead, again, a libertarian candidate seeking the Libertarian Party nomination for president. Thank you so much for joining us for this part of the show.
Thank you.
All right, folks, we're out for this segment on WYSL. We'll be back in just a few minutes here on A Free Solution. Talk to you soon. All right. And we're out on the radio show. Lars, again, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, guys.
Appreciate it. All right, I feel like we didn't get to dig into like the wonky policy issues. You have some good, a few other issues on your site too. So folks watching this online, and I know a bunch of folks catch us later, catch the podcast portion. Check it out. And, I know you're very active on social media, so definitely worth engaging with.
Yep. Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. All right.
I wanted to lob you a softball. I wanted to lob you a softball and have you coach your Robert Reich for a minute or two.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, take care.
But thank you very much.
All right. So, taking them out of stream. All right, cool. There we go. That's first candidate of the season down. Tim, you realize this means that we have to invite all the candidates on. What have you done, Tim?
Well, we're now obligated, right? Is my voice coming through okay? I'm very concerned.
Your voice is coming through. Like the sound doesn't always match up with your lips, but the voice is coming through. I promise you.
All right, good. That gives me a little more confidence. And just one more issue that we'll have to straighten out when we're doing these on the road podcasts, because it's a blast. I miss doing it if I miss a day. So if I miss a week, so I've got to figure this out. And there goes my picture, but my voice does come through, so that's good. People can listen.
Voice is still coming through, uninterrupted. It's fine. But that's Lars though. He didn't say anything embarrassing, which is like, man, great for a libertarian candidate. I love it.
He was crazy.
He didn't say anything crazy. He
is taking on Robert Reich. You know how like Spike takes on, Spike takes on ATF. Lars is taking on Robert Reich, and you know how much I hate Robert Reich. I just love it. I absolutely love it.
Robert Reich deserves it. But yeah, so I'm learning a little bit about him because I've seen Lars around a little bit on Twitter. Just started following him officially recently. I'll see his tweets pop up occasionally even before I followed him. I know there's like Chase Oliver running. So who else? I won't forget anyone who's running on the Libertarian side.
I like Chase. Mike Termott.
Yep, that's
Chase Oliver, Mike Termott, Lars Mapstead, Joshua Smith filed his campaign run.
Yeah, I suppose. It seems like he's going to run a trolley campaign.
There's one other one that.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel bad for missing it, and I'm
sorry.
Someone in the comments.
Larry Sharp and Spike Cohen to run.
Yeah, I see Spike Cohen's name out there a lot. Who's understandable. Like he's the vice presidential candidate last time around. He's very active, and Larry as well. Justin Amash is another one you see around occasionally. Who'd be great. I don't know if you do it if he wants to put himself through the brutality of a libertarian primary. We didn't make him say Lars say the magic words, taxation is theft, while we're on the show. So we didn't force him to say that.
He would say it though. I know he would.
I know. So it's
he would say it though. I know he would.
So I know like every debate, like someone would try to get like John McAfee and like Gary Johnson and Austin Peterson to say it. And, yeah, you're breaking up a little bit. Are you delayed? Are you not hearing me?
Can I connect to the mic? I am not hearing you very well. No. So that's going to get weird if we start trying to have a conversation, Sure
is. You gonna reconnect with your phone, Tim? We'll cut all this out.
I'm going to try that. Can I do that, you think?
Maybe.
All right.
Why not?
Hold on. Let me try to... Let's try it.
It's great.
I got that. Hang on. Let me...
Technical difficulties, folks. Technical difficulties.
I got the behind the baseball stuff. Inside baseball. Let's see. Check 1, 2, check 1, 2. All right.
Tim, you gotta leave.
Tim, you gotta. I gotta turn this off, right? How's that?
That was better. Yeah, you should leave the stream. Get out of here.
I just shut the other one. I shut the other one off. I just shut it right down.
All right, there we go. All right. So now we've gone through this. We're good. So, sorry, online audience. Appreciate y'all being here. So I know we got Sam out there too. We didn't end up get to the some of your comments too. Sam just said Lars is a great candidate, and also made notes that Teddy Roosevelt knows the same thing about the corruption and the primaries being rigged, giving the American people no true choice. They sued him for that claim in April 1915. Nothing has changed. And Teddy Roosevelt ran as progressive. The Bull Moose Party is a progressive. I mean,
right. He was kind of independent, right? That was kind of a party he created or something.
It was.
So good for him. So it's possible, right? If we catch fire.
Oh, sure. It could happen. It's interesting to see like how he broke through that system, challenged his former party and Taft for the presidency. And although two things about that. One is Teddy Roosevelt also sucks. Sorry, like I know people like to look at him as like a cool manly guy, but like man, he was a big government authoritarian. Would have absolutely been a dictator if he could. And then
true.
that election ended with Woodrow Wilson being the president, who may be, if not the worst president of all time, at least in the top 3. Like he's up there.
He is up there, dude. He's like the income tax, the wars. That guy was the ultimate authoritarian bureaucrat, kind of ultra bureaucrat, kind of just enslaved us all through the federal income tax, bro.
Yeah,
that dude.
Not a great president, like by any stretch. So yeah, and I'm not related to him, and that's important for everyone to know.
I used to try to tell everybody that you were related to him.
Tim, you've gone dark now. I can still hear you.
All right. I'm trying to, so I preloaded all of my news stories onto my phone thinking I'd be able to broadcast through my laptop, right? But nothing's working right tonight, Kevin. But we can't just give up on the show. We've got to go on with the show, as they say.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, we'll do a show. You can pull them up. I'll kind of lead off with stuff. You can pull it up on your laptop as we go.
I shut my laptop off because it was getting reverberation.
No, all right. Well, that's all right. But by the way, we'll talk about the car thefts in Rochester. We'll talk about tariffs. We'll talk about all sorts of stuff. So we'll go back in just a few seconds. 31:30. You get settled in the meantime, Tim.
I'll do my best.
I don't know. Car theft stats are nuts.
They're wild, man.
All right, back in 5, 4, 3, 2. Welcome back to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson, yours today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Variant O'Connor.
I'm here, and hopefully you guys can hear me a little better, because right now I can definitely hear you better, Kevin. I had a backup plan. We're back at it. The show must go on, Kevin.
That's right. No, we just roll with it. We adapt. That's what we do. So we had Lars on, and you can check him out if you're interested. We maybe we'll have some other libertarian candidates on too. But back in the day of Radio Free New York too, we also had all the libertarian candidates on, all of them, good, bad, and ugly. They were all there. So we're open to it. We even have the Democrat and Republican. If Donald Trump and Joe Biden want to go on our show, we'll interview them. We'll give them 20 minutes, maybe.
I mean, okay, yeah, we would do it. Not 10
Come
minutes.
on, Tim.
Guys.
You know you would.
Yeah,
if we had 10 minutes to talk to Joe Biden, like, we'd take it. And
we would. It would be hilarious. The questions would be very uncomfortable for him. I must say.
Yeah, no, he's the president. He gets extra scrutiny. Like, people with power get extra scrutiny. That's what they need. That's what they deserve. And he's certainly given us plenty of reasons to ask him tough questions. So,
that's for sure, brother. That's for sure.
So anyway, yeah, we did want to pivot back to a local issue. Just a couple of different things, few different things coming up on the local level. I did have another marijuana story for New York State, but like we won't do it yet because we've done like 2 weeks in a row.
We really haven't. People are going to get bored of our campaign for marijuana.
Oh, the libertarians are talking about marijuana again and why they're mad that THC seltzers are banned. All right, but anyway, no, we're not talking about that. We're talking about car thefts in Rochester, because I was shocked. I knew the car theft situation was bad, but I was shocked that Rochester, New York, was the number 1 in the nation for the percentage increase in car thefts at a whopping 355%. 355%. That is bonkers. And it's so bonkers in part because it's so much higher than anywhere else. Number 2 was Cincinnati, Ohio. Number 3, Buffalo, New York. Number 4, Chicago, Illinois. Those 162, 135, 130. So still big increase, still like more than double.
Sure.
But Rochester, 355%. Cincinnati, Ohio is 162. It's the next closest.
Kevin, let me help my conservative friends out right now and say it's because of bail reform. What do you think? Is that possible? I don't know. Like, arguably, there is a point here that could be made that the police have no authority to hold these kids, and so they're back out on the streets doing it over and over and over again.
So a couple interesting things here, right? So one is the problem of car thefts generally is not specific to New York State. Now, Rochester and Buffalo are like 1 and 3, and it's weird. Like again, Rochester being a relatively small city, like the increase doesn't have to be that big for it to look like outsized, but still, like it's not just states with bail reform; it's a lot of other places too, right?
Yeah.
And same with like the level of violence and stuff. Like actually, violence, the number of homicides went way down. We're back down to like 2018 levels again in
That's
Rochester.
good. That's actually really good news, right? That's
Yeah,
fantastic.
because they were up. It was really bad. Now again, still not a great year by any means, but doing a lot better than we were the last few years in terms of violence in Rochester. So I don't know that bail reform explains the whole thing, right? Because there's two problems with it. One is that, like, you know, there are some ways to hold some people and to bring restrictions on some people, and I know that I can go over some statistics about like how many people are going out and doing other crimes. Most people who are caught for crimes and are released aren't going out and committing other crimes. It's like 10 to 20% of people, right? It's not a lot. Like most people aren't going out and do that, right? A lot of those people who are accused of crimes are also being released and without not released, but they are having their charges dropped, right? Okay, right. So were they innocent? Would it have been better for them to be held in jail for 6 months and then to have the charges dropped anyway? No, I don't think so.
No, I agree with you there.
Like the only thing, and I've said this repeatedly, the only thing I'll give conservatives for, like, sometimes there are a handful of people, and a lot of the theft in Rochester is driven by really a very small percentage of the population. There's a few people who are doing like one thing and they're screwing around, or they're being dumb kids and like endangering themselves and others, and then they don't ever do anything again. And then there's a handful of kids who are doing, like, a lot of them, a disproportionate number of crime in Rochester. There should be some mechanism for the type of person who's in there 4, 5, 6, 7 times. Like, okay, there's only so many times you can like get caught and be fairly credibly accused of committing this crime before there needs to be some sort of tougher intervention in preventing you from hurting people. Because like I say, again, it's a thing, like everyone in Rochester who has a Kia or Hyundai right now is putting the wheel locks on there. I had a friend who was in from out of town who didn't know about everyone stealing cars, was given a Kia as a rental, and it was stolen within hours.
Well, that's what I was actually going to ask you about. Like, if we had real statistics, do you think that maybe Rochester's the area where these kids understand that Kias and Hyundais can actually be hacked into and started with your phone unless you get the corrective software updates? Like, it's maybe Rochester,
because that's what I'm wondering. Is it like, okay, are the people of Rochester just not updating the cars? Is it that are the youth are more tech savvy here?
That's what I'm saying. I'm giving them credit.
Like the kids here know how to use the phones to be able to hack the cars more effectively. That's kind of what I'm thinking. It's such a weird outlier. Like, it's such a big outlier from the rest of the country. Like, what on earth is different about Rochester? Like, I have my city councilwoman's like, oh, we're just underfunding youth programs. I'm like, okay, but like we're still funding them a lot. And like other cities, it doesn't explain it because other cities have different levels of funding too. What the weird part is like, I don't know what the variable is that makes Rochester different. Like, is it bail reform? Well, you know, we're seeing other states without bail reform having similar problems. Other blue cities and red cities, for that matter, having this problem too. Big increases in car thefts. And there's variation in funding for youth violence intervention programs across cities, and they're still seeing this problem, whether they're well funded or not funded at all. They're still seeing this problem. So what's the variable? And Tim, you might be right. Maybe the Rochester kids are nerds. Like maybe that's
nerds, tech savvy nerds who decide to steal cars. It's weird because when we play around with statistics, it's hard to get to the real thing. Like, this is astronomically out of line with the rest of the country, though, right? So, what percentage of that would be attributable to bail reform? Like, it's
maybe. I mean, maybe it's part of it, right? And again, maybe it's
right.
Like, if you're getting caught as a 16-year-old, and some of them feel like they can do this a bunch of times while they're awaiting their trial, and they will do it 6, 7, 8 times, whatever. You know, there's probably some of that, and And I admittedly need to dig a little bit more. I don't know that that's the case for everyone, but like I
Right.
do need to dig into that because I think like some kids, like they're or whoever, not, it doesn't even have to be kids because sometimes they're older, they're adults who are doing this stuff. Like they're, you know, sometimes committing other crimes with these things too. Some of them aren't getting caught, and which is a whole other thing. Which they'll blame on defunding the police, which Rochester sort of did, but not really.
Right. They just changed the funding streams. And look, so arguably, like, could it be, oh, let's see, besides the tech savvy thing, what else could we get to? I'm very willing, Kevin, as always, to blame the government response to COVID as this long-term backlash that we destroyed some young people's lives and a couple of years of their schooling, changed their goal structure, and now they're out stealing cars. Like I'm comfortable
Could
with
be.
that.
I mean,
that allegation.
well, Rochester in particular, we have like a school system that is challenged. Let's call it challenged.
Yeah,
It's
probably,
bad.
right?
It's totally broken. Yeah, like it's a bad system. You know, it's tough. COVID made things even tougher. And then we've talked about on the show too, like how there's not a lot of places where like young people can just hang out too.
Sure.
There's no like third place for, you know, teenagers to be able to go unless you like either pay money or you're accompanied by an adult. Like there's no place for people to be able to hang out in semi-supervised environments. Everything is like restricted. And
Right.
that might have something to do with it. Like
I could see that being a big part of it, like that kind of an oppressive structure, governing structure, and then they failed so completely with COVID that the kids are. I'm assuming it's young people. I'm making a lot of assumptions in my
Yeah.
theory here, and that probably maybe are fair, maybe aren't fair, but I feel completely comfortable with them because I get to blame the government.
Maybe there's a
for it.
rash of like 47-year-olds like stealing these Kias too, and I just don't know about it. I got
I'll
the
tell you
stat
what,
totally
I
wrong.
mean, at 56, I have no idea how to hack into a car with my cell phone. Like, I've got no idea how to do that. So
Aren't you on TikTok, Tim? Come on. I thought that's
am.
where you learned about it.
Well, I could have learned about it, but I didn't actually Google or TikTok that. Like, I was, arguing with people over politics. That's what I do.
The algorithm didn't bring you how
Kia
hot
car
wire
thefts.
cars. Yeah, that's
no.
really missed out there, Tim.
Yeah. Yes, I feel bad now.
So we got that issue. Now, we got like 5 minutes left. I'm gonna quickly touch on like another Rochester issue. And I'll share the link to this report too. The thing about the dogs. There's there's a report is in WXXI and it was written by Gino Finelli, and it talks about the number of dogs that have been killed by police in Rochester, and it's a lot. It's like dozens of dogs, and you hear some of these stories of like you'll just be like, well, the officer walked into a yard and a dog ran up to him and he shot the dog, and like that's the whole story. Like the dog could be friendly, the dog could have just been like, hey, who's in my yard now, and the police officer could just say like, oh, he's coming right for me, and kills the dog, and then there's no accountability. Nothing, not at all. No discipline. No. Sometimes there ends up being a settlement, but it's not like the police officer pays that. It's
no. The taxpayers pay it.
Yeah. We collectively, the citizens of Rochester, pay when police officers shoot dogs. Some of this, like it's like just the level of like disrespect shown to families. Imagine like trying to, even if you're a pro police, even if you think police can do no wrong, imagine trying to get your child to trust a police officer after seeing a police officer shoot your friendly dog in front of them.
And look, I think it's important that the only guys that are going to take this issue on the way that it needs to be taken on are guys like me and you, like kind of fringe, kind of libertarian. We want to talk about fixing qualified immunity because, guys, if we fix qualified immunity, the dog death rate will go down. Like police overreact to the presence of dogs. You've seen anybody that wants to check out videos on TikTok or Twitter or anything like that can see where police are very afraid of dogs. And honestly, I think that it's something that if we eliminated qualified immunity, they would have to be kind of a little bit more cautious about how they deal with this. So when I read one of the ones I read, the guy barges through the fence to talk to a lady about her calling about a stray dog earlier in the day, and her dog kind of went at the guy or walked towards him or barked once, and unfortunately, right in front of the granddaughter, right? Like the
Yeah,
dog
I think that was
ended
in the
up.
Rochester story. But
Yeah, that's in the that's where I pulled it from. It was horrible, man.
yeah, no, just awful, right? Like getting calling, like thinking you're gonna like get some help with this other dog, and then having that happen to your family is just absolutely awful. And there's no excuse for it. Again, there's no excuse for like the cowardice shown by a police officer to do that. And I'm sorry if you're so startled by like a dog running up to you, and you can read in the story there's 60 dogs shot, 22 of them died. Like it wasn't in all the cases, only in a handful of cases did the dog actually like bite either someone else or attempt to bite the police officer. And a lot of them, like that did not happen. They shot first and dealt with, frankly, the lack of consequences later. And there's a couple ways to deal with it, right? There's there's the qualified immunity thing. There's the insurance thing that we talk about frequently. If officers are required to hold individual insurance policies, that can be part of it. And there's solutions. What's frustrating is like in Rochester, like there's a humane law enforcement that exists as part of our nonprofit in the area, Lollipop Farm, that has tried to train the police department on how to like understand like dog behavior and dog signs and how to like approach these situations a little bit more effectively. But unfortunately, it's still a serious problem where dogs get killed when these specialized actual police officers from a local the dog shelter aren't the ones to respond to these situations.
And the guys that are trained to deal with dogs don't end up shooting dogs very often, right? They just take them into custody, basically take them into custody.
Right. Yeah. No, they know how to like handle it. Okay, this is a dangerous dog. Here's how I handle this effectively. Here's how I keep myself safe and people around me safe. And because they understand the situation, they know what they're getting into. They know how to deal with a dog, and the priority is to both keep themselves safe and to make sure that dog lives through the encounter. So like, if that dog is scared or hurt or confused, which is sometimes the case, right? Like you can isolate the dog and hopefully, get the situation resolved without someone's family pet dying.
Yeah. So I guess I'd suggest people read the article because there's certain pieces of it that I'm not sure are fit for us to discuss, like how the officer ended up leaving the day that he shot that lady's dog and what they left her with. I just think that people should pay attention to this stuff. And I think it's an important dynamic I think it's an easy fix too, Kevin. I don't know that we have to go all the way to getting rid of qualified immunity to start lowering the death toll, on
we don't have to.
Pets.
I mean, we should anyway, but we don't.
Right. No, it'd be good. It's a good way to get there.
Yeah. On that note, though, we are out of time for this segment. Thanks again for joining us here on A Free Solution. We're going to be back in just a few minutes. Talk to you soon.
Yeah, man, that article hurt my soul a little bit. I was like, dude.
That's it. Yeah, I shared the link on all the channels in here. You can check it out. Yeah, it's a, and if you're listening on the podcast, you'll just have to go follow one of our pages. If you're not already, you should be following all of them, every single one.
Every single one of them.
And check out the article. Yeah, it's a rough read. It's tough. But really narrows in on the topic specific to one city and the policies that the city has like tried to do, and unfortunately the lack of accountability for the officers who have killed dogs, and in a situation that, like, again, I know that there's some justified situations. I get that. I'm not naive, but man, like a lot of them are like it's not even close, and you'll see it's not just specific to Russia. It's all over, right?
Right. No, look, we're pragmatic, man. We accept that police officers should maintain themselves in a safe fashion. We understand that. We do understand. I think we both kind of understand that we need to have police officers. Like there's no here to there by eliminating police officers. It's absolutely not. What we want is a better system. We want more training, and when it gets applied to humans too, guys, I want them to be able to diffuse situations, because there's ways to do it that don't always resort to getting control of the situation that second. But look, also want them to know when they've got to be safe. Like it's a kind of a double-edged sword there.
Yeah,
I know there's a fine line that they're going to have to walk sometimes, probably.
Yeah, no, it's tough. It's just that, like, again, in situations where like they've clearly made the wrong decision, where it's a friendly family dog. Like, and I think about that all the time. Like I said, my dog used to work in an office with humane law enforcement. He associates police officers with treats. When he sees police officers, he wants to
Ooh,
run up
wow.
excitedly because he associates them with people who give him treats.
And he's a big old lab, right?
And he's
man,
a lab Great Dane mix, like, and he's
he's huge.
friendly, absolutely friendly, but like a skittish police officer who doesn't know, who just sees a big black dog coming at him. I don't know how they're going to react. And I hope they have the training to like recognize my dog as like friendly and excited to see them and not like aggressive.
Right. And a threat to their safety, right?
Yeah.
Their personal safety, which, I get it, man. We want them to be aware of their personal safety. We do. But we also want them to be aware that not every dog is their enemy, And I'm sure they already do understand that. I think
most people do on it.
Yeah.
I get it. And like I say, I don't think, like, I know there's memes about it, but I really don't think like police officers wake up in the morning, like most of them anyway, gonna go like hurt a dog today. Like, no, that's not
right. Exactly.
A lot of them are, I'm sure, absolutely devastated when they've made the wrong decision, but also like wrong decisions require accountability. Sorry, like it is.
Yeah, that's fair, Kevin. I think that's fair.
So anyway, we should probably get on to the last segment. Let's over to that. We'll head back at 51. We'll talk about some tariffs. Is that what we're talking about?
I'm calling it food tyranny, Kevin, to be honest with you. I mean, this is literally, we have two specific instances. One's a big one where we get to lecture everybody on the evils of tariffs. But then we have another one, too, that we can talk about a little bit, too. Like, we've got two subjects to get into this last segment that deal with food tyranny and the government making our food simply more expensive. The gods of scarcity strike once again.
All right. Well, love talking about those things. We'll get back in a second. Welcome back to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson today, joined by Tim the Freedom Variant O'Connor.
I'm here, Kevin, and we get to lecture everybody on one of my favorite subjects, that the government has been implementing artificial scarcity on us for decades, okay? And that right now, up against Joe Biden imposing tariffs on steel. And so why am I freaking out about that? A lot of people are going to be like, well, that's protecting American jobs, and he's doing it to protect a little steel mill in Ohio, and yada, yada, yada. Let me tell you what happens. The bottom line, your food is going to get more expensive. Kevin, did you check out that article I sent you on this?
I sure did, and we'll post a link to the article that Tim is talking about in the.
It's a big one, man. It's got these artificial scarcity that's imposed on us, making our food more expensive through tariffs. These things drive me nuts. These things punish poor people, Kevin, and nobody seems to understand that except for me and you.
That's right. Well, and the folks in the article, I suppose.
True.
Right.
Fair enough. The folks at Reason who, got me mad last week because they were mean to RFK, but probably he kind of deserved it, so I've forgiven them. And here we are propping them up again. Like, it's fair. It's cool.
Yeah.
We'll give them a shout out.
But yeah, let's talk about the specific ways in which it's gonna the hurt poor people too. Like, and because you'd say like, okay, well, we're gonna save 3 jobs at a factory in Ohio or something, right? Okay, cool. We've saved 3 jobs, and that's the campaign speech. That's the stump speech. What are the other ripple effects of maybe making steel more expensive in the United States?
Well, in this situation, in this very specific situation, the type of steel that they're talking about is readily converted to canned food, Kevin. Okay, so what, we save 3 jobs or 5 jobs in Ohio, but we starve an old person, or we limit an old person's ability to travel and interact with their grandkids. We make their lives more expensive. Same for a poor person, same for somebody trying to get on their feet. Like, when we make food more expensive, like, it drives me nuts. And that's what we're doing with this tariff.
No, that's what we end up doing. And it's like, okay, it makes it a little bit more expensive, but it's everything in combination too, because what ends up happening is it doesn't just like make the cans expensive, it'll make the production process more expensive, it makes equipment more expensive, it makes in some situations, it ends up making like the entire like chain like more expensive. And that's in addition to all of the other stuff that's happening, right, with various inflations, with various taxes, with various regulations, restrictions on importing like lower cost goods from overseas, and everything else that ends up going into like the cost of food, driving it up makes it difficult, if not impossible, for someone to be able to survive on their own, to survive independently. And even with government assistance, ends up being a challenge.
Yeah, sure. And this is one of those raw materials of canned food production, right? So, like, I think what you were pointing at there is that it will get marked up, taxed, marked up, taxed, marked up, taxed, all the way along the line. So, what could be a millipenny of a tariff is going to have a substantial impact on somebody's bottom line when if they're living off of canned food or they use a little bit of canned food. It's going to have it's going to kill my corned beef and hash, Kevin. Like, it's going to raise the price. Like, I don't know.
I do love corned beef hash.
Who doesn't,
man, like, I know it looks like dog food, but
it smells like it too a little bit.
It
But
does,
once you cook
it
it
does.
up, put some pepper and salt on it, bro.
Oh, it's
I'm telling
great.
you.
No, it's like one of my favorite. That's usually my go-to at diner breakfast. Now, you guys, I know 90% of the time it's just coming out of a big can. They're scooping it out of a giant can. I know what it is. Corned beef and hash and eggs. Okay, I'll get the whole like. Yeah, some places they have the homemade stuff. It's nice. It's a fancy treat. Cool. Everything else I can't. It's fine. It's $5. It's at a diner. It's dog food. It's delicious.
Oh God, I mean, and if they cook it just right, like they heat it right up, or they get it a little bit crusty and crispy.
Oh yeah, no, it's like they put it on the
bro.
griddle and they get like the thick layer of like crusty on both sides.
Maybe a little bacon grease slides its way in there. I'm just saying.
There you go.
You know, like that's a winner.
Good stuff. Now that's all right. Yeah, if you're a diner who can do that, like, you got my heart.
Yeah. So again, like this thing is where these are things where the government is directly imposing scarcity on us. And that's one of the things that people are afraid of. That's one of the tools that ends up keeping us fighting, is that we feel threatened constantly. And tariffs that don't allow for competitive advantages. Like China can make the steel cheaper for canned food. Like why we don't. So it ties into everything, right? Like we don't want to be an enemy of China. We want to trade with the people of China. Like we want the people of China to benefit from trading with us. We want to have value to them, and we want them to have value to us. Like that's how the world could get better, guys. That's one of the ways we could heal, you know? So it's like weirdly emotional issue for me too, you know?
Well, it's what it is. Like every time we add tariffs, it ends up being like people present it as like a tax on like, overseas goods and leveling the playing field or whatever. No, it's a tax on us. That's what it is. And it's same with like the other types of steel tariffs too, that end up making like washing machines more expensive, right? Increase the price of those. Like it's just, now suddenly to like be able to buy your first home and buy your first appliances, it gets that much harder. Like, and I'll say it's not any one thing. It's everything one on top of the other. And the goods end up being more expensive. Like if Americans are going to be able to produce like high quality steel, let them produce high quality steel. Manufacturers will buy it, but let us compete on the world market for this stuff, because when you end up creating these barriers, it ends up making it more difficult for American manufacturing to survive, for the people, not the steel mills themselves, but for all the other manufacturing processes, like I said, the appliance manufacturers or the can manufacturers who rely on being able to get lower cost product from overseas to be able to make the margins to be able to sell to the type of people who can afford their product. It has ripple effects down the line. So now marginally, if people buy 3% fewer washers, that means that some of those factories might close. Like you don't see that effect. You don't think about that effect. I mean, it's like broken windows fallacy, but applied to, the tariff situation, right? Like, you see like, it saved you paid the glass manufacturer. You saved the steel factory. But what about all the other stuff that didn't happen because you intervened, because you made stuff artificially more expensive?
What about the people that can't afford a washing machine and have to keep going and spending hours at a laundromat? Like one of the biggest improvements of my adult life was going from having to use a laundromat regularly to having my own equipment in my house. And if there's been times in my life where $50 could make that difference, right? Like I couldn't just go buy a new washer. I had to buy a used washer and make sure it worked and fix it. So like as these things get more expensive, there are going to be people who are forced into going to the laundromat. There are going to be people who are forced to wash their clothes less. Like it's a real
it's being a quality problem. It's quality of life issue that you don't necessarily see because you don't think about that person who like was right on the bubble of being able to buy a washer or not buy a washer, right? Or the person who's on the bubble of being able to afford a meal or not afford a meal. Like, we don't always think about like the down the line effects of this type of stuff, but it still matters. The unseen in the situation still matters.
Right. Exactly. And so how are we doing on time? Because like we could belabor this a little bit more, but
no, we got 6 minutes left. 6.5 minutes left.
First of all, as I've regularly talked about, I think it's okay. Like this subject, what I'm about to bring up is not that far removed from this kind of concept of tariffs. Local agricultural farmers, what's the name of the farmer advocacy group? It's slipping my mind right now. But basically what happens is they have to pay these checkoff companies that come up with creative advertising to sell U.S. agricultural goods. And this is the week where all the lobbyists from these programs are in Washington, D.C. trying to buy more regulations, like, your milk mustache deal and all of those things. This is the week. And so my one of the guys that has always impressed me is Thomas Massey, and he's trying to make a big stink about it on Twitter. What do you think about that, Kevin? We're one more artificial scarcity kind of thing, one more layer of expense for our farmers, which translates into less affordable food for the American people.
Yeah, sure. And let's read Thomas Massey's tweet, the one that you're referencing. He says, quote, one reason grocery bill is high, compulsory checkoff programs. Farmers are forced by Congress to pay money to industry-governed boards whose employees can earn as much as $1 million a year. Fearing reform of these programs, the cronies are lobbying hard this week. So that's what he's talking about in the specific quote from Thomas Massey. And yeah, no, I mean, it's you add in these other things like, okay, now you got to pay a little bit to pay to advertise your program. Is it really necessary? Do we need to do these things? No. It's a special interest group that is just able to collect and redistribute money. It's one of those programs where it's in the grand scheme of things, like not a lot. It's not a lot of money in the grand scheme of things, but it's
right.
But it's very important to the people who are involved in it, to the people who are benefiting from these programs. So that's how it stays. And again, that one program, all these programs, they add up. Like people always use the example of like sugar subsidies for that. Like, how much are we subsidizing? How much are you personally, Tim, paying for sugar subsidies a year? It's like a penny, right?
Right, a penny, but go ahead.
But it adds up, right? It's the same thing. And with these programs, that's how it is. It's like, all right, like collectively, are we paying all that much for it? No, but it adds up. It makes our food a little bit more expensive. It mandates costs for farmers. It mandates costs for us. And but the people who are involved, they care about it quite a bit. And so they will fight tooth and nail to keep these programs going. And that's why they're lobbying hard this week, is for that very reason.
Yeah, they're basically, and what's lobbying, guys? I think we all know what lobbying is. They're literally buying political favor. They're buying access to the budgetary process. They're lobbying. Like, look, I get the need. It's a free speech issue, but also it's very corrupt, right? Like, I'm not the only one that thinks that. I can't be the only one that thinks that. And when it's adding to the scarcity of food, adding to the expense of food is adding to the scarcity of food. Less people can afford it. That's it. Does that make sense? Like,
it does make sense.
So what's our solution? Like, Thomas Massey does all this good stuff, advocating for a better program when it comes to labeling food, advocating for a better program when it comes to knowing where our food is coming from, advocating for more local availability of food to go through the USDA process faster and easier. And people like kind of crap all over him, and I don't understand it.
Well, it's because if the FDA were slightly less, imposing, if it were slightly less draconian, then maybe our food might possibly be somewhat unsafe. That's the argument. Even if they don't fully understand the ways in which, like, the government, the FDA, the agricultural systems, like, are actually intervening to maybe not really be all that significant of a difference maker in terms of food safety.
Well, they're not a difference maker. One of the things they do is set minimum standards for food so that a place like McDonald's can get away with putting sawdust. And guys, you find the articles, you decide whether they're true or not. Like, I'm not going to say what I know that McDonald's puts in.
That was like Taco Bell doing that or something.
No,
like
that doesn't matter what Taco Bell does it, Kevin. That's different. It's different.
No,
okay?
it doesn't matter what they put in their ground. No, it's still tasty. It's fine.
Because it's delicious.
Anyway.
Yeah, it's a different story, but like
Says someone who ate like Taco Bell like last week.
yeah. So like FDA does some minimum standard stuff that big restaurant chains take advantage of to lower their quality of their product and still charge you the same amount of money or even more, right? So that's a reality, and it's an unfortunate reality. But I do forgive Taco Bell for it on some level.
Right, as we all do. You say like, oh, man, in theory that's kind of great. I'm gonna still keep eating it.
Oh yeah, no, Taco Bell's different. McDonald's, on the other hand, it's like, I don't know, their advertising's bad. I think their food isn't that good. Taco Bell's got something else to it, though.
Taco Bell, anti-McDonald's. All right, I decide I'm fine with McDonald's. I don't really have anything negative to say about them. But
your kid's gonna love McDonald's for a couple years, bro. The kids love it. They just enjoy the whole little package, the Happy Meal package. It's okay. It's still just minimal quality for what you're paying money for.
You know what McDonald's offers, and it's a shame they're not on the throughway anymore. Like relatively consistent food. Like, listen, I know it's not great. It's not stellar, but I know McDonald's is usually going to taste roughly the same no matter where I go. It's like, here's some mediocre fuel to shove into my body. And
absolutely. A cheeseburger in Rochester is going to taste almost exactly the same as a cheeseburger in Oneonta from McDonald's, and it's really the same with Taco Bell. That is one of the one of their powerhouses is consistency, right?
Yeah. No. So, but we are starting to run out of time, and I was going to bring up a fun story about obnoxious Twitter leftists and bananas, because we'll continue the food theme.
Right.
but we're out of time on the radio show. So if you're listening on the radio show, you're gonna have to subscribe to the podcast or follow our pages, listen to our show, join us for the live show if you can. But of course, the video is still going to be here afterwards. But find us afterwards. We have an extended program. Thanks again for joining us here on WYSL for a free solution. We are out for the evening on WYSL. Take care. All right. The banana story. It's funny because like I can tell sometimes that you and I run in like somewhat different libertarian circles.
Oh yeah, definitely. Mine are the kind of look. My guys are the conservative guys that realize that the conservatives got no use for them, and they don't really hate people, but also they kind of hate a lot of certain pieces of the government that I'm very sympathetic to. So those are my bros on Twitter for sure.
And I get like Jared Polis libertarian Twitter.
You get a little bit of the Reason guys, the hardcore
Reason. And
I have a lot of respect for the Reason guys. The Cato guys, I did a show with Colin Graybo. He was great. He made great points. It was all like, there's a certain amount of the beltway type libertarians that occasionally, when it comes down to like social justice warrior issues and stuff like that my conservative bros kind of get annoyed with. And I understand it. I really do. Like, guys, if you're out there, share this with the other conservative bro kind of libertarian friends. Give me some more followers. I'm so close to like 5,000. Like, I'd love to break over the top of it. If I do break over the top of it, I'm going to pay Elon $8 a month so I get the blue check.
Do that. Get the blue check.
Yeah.
Then start your subscription. Get paid.
Yeah. That's get paid, man. People can subscribe to our podcast. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah. But
huge. It would be huge.
Yeah, for sure. So speaking of like the Beltway Cato guys, Scott Lincecum is like what I retweeted this from, who's been a guest on his Radio Free New York at the time, but he's been on the show before too. But he was retweeting like this just absolutely unhinged leftist, like degrowth person, who I think deleted her Twitter account over this, because like neoliberal and like libertarian Twitter were just like all over this. But this is the quote from this Twitter thread that was bonkers. It says, "No one, absolutely no one, not even the most dishonest globe emoji neoliberal freak, buys a banana at Trader Joe's in Calgary in December and marvels in ecstasy at the decadent opulence of modern capitalism. They just dully cross off the list and move on, barely conscious of it." And here's the thing, though. Like, I'm totally the guy who's like, if you think about like, man, it's so cool you could buy a banana in Canada any time of year.
Yeah, no,
that's upstate New York. Like, it's actually a very cool thing. Like, we used to not be able to get most produce any time of year. You couldn't get any produce in the winter.
Yeah,
unless it was stored in someone's basement. Yeah.
Back when I was a kid, lettuce was not an option in December, bro. Like, it really wasn't. It took probably until I was 16 before I started seeing it in stores. So like that's real. So basically, so the world went after her for that, or what?
Yeah, so like, I mean, it was part of, like I said, a totally bonkers thread. But like the point that like a bunch of the neoliberals and the libertarians are like, actually, like, it is something to marvel at. It is something to think is cool, because like we do live in a world in which we have like access to a lot of great stuff. Like, we've built supply chains despite government intervention, despite the government making it difficult and expensive to do this stuff, that there's enough demand for this stuff that people figured out a way to do it and still be able to make a profit off of it. And that's pretty cool. And again, if we got government out of the way on some of these things, we'd open up even more possibilities. But it's a cool thing that I can get like pomegranates from Turkey when like they're ripe. It's a cool thing that I can get bananas from like Central America like any time of year. It's a cool thing that I'm able to get like produce from like Asia any time of year. And like that's something that didn't exist like even when I was younger. Like, it just wasn't a thing. I couldn't get like strawberries any time of year. It's a seasonal thing. Now I can get it whenever. Right?
No,
which is great. It's one of my kids' favorite snacks. Avocados just weren't a thing. You couldn't get avocados in New York like
you almost couldn't
15
get them
years ago.
You almost couldn't get them at all. Much less now they're like $1 a piece, or like even sometimes you see them under $1, right? Like
now they're cheap. And like, so the point of like this thread actually was this woman was basically being like, no one actually cares all about this stuff. If we go back to living like serfs and it sounds like I'm joking, but like literally they like live like it's the 1200s and drink beer and have sex and hang out and you'll be perfectly happy. Like,
and you'll die when you're 35 and your teeth will fall out. Like, that's kind of like, that's where we're going with that. Like, let's not do it that way.
Yeah. They're like, you won't miss any of this stuff. Like, really, like, back in the day, people were perfectly happy without this capitalist like opulence, and you will be too. You'll be happier with less.
All right. Well, I could just eat with one knife and I don't need fork and silverware. Like, then I save a kid in China from having to work an hour. Like, what the heck? That doesn't make any sense to me. It's like so abstract kind of thinking. Like, obviously she'd be like, all right, you don't need cars. You don't need a bus. You don't need nothing. Just like grow your own food. Good luck in the winter.
Yep, that's exactly it.
Sucker.
They're like, yeah, we could just grow most of it on our own. I'm like, no, you can't. You don't know how to. Like, you really like. You have no idea how much subsistence farming sucks. Like, it is bad. It killed lots of people. You have one bad year, and like your whole family could die. It sucks. That's how most of humanity lived for most of their lives. I'm super glad we do not live that way anymore.
Subsistence farming is brutal. Anybody that's had a garden where it's like a little bit bigger than you wanted to actually take care of knows what subsistence farming is like, because you got to go to that thing, you got to weed that thing, and then at the end of the summer the deer decide to get frisky and they go into that thing and they tear it all apart and they eat all of your green beans and they eat some of your cucumbers and then they step on your broccoli, and guys, your whole garden gets wrecked, man. And it's cool. Just could you imagine counting on that to survive? It would just be awful.
Yeah, imagine like all the work you've put into that, but like that is all day, every day for like 11, 12 hours a day, because that's what you're going to have to do that, particularly if you don't have the benefits of like industrial farming techniques and pesticides and machinery that are brought to you by capitalism. Like, you really have to work constantly to do that. And people don't get that. Like people didn't work a couple months out of the year. I'm like, yeah, because they couldn't. They were just huddling for warmth in their like huts and like hoping their family doesn't die.
That's always been one of the things. Like, honestly, it's very confusing for me to people that burn wood, because it's actually like a part-time job that doesn't pay. So when people were huddling for wood or huddling for warmth, they were still chasing down wood all winter long to try to keep their freaking house warm. So I'm just saying that keeping warm in the winter always relied on wood, and wood is always work to keep your family warm. Like, it literally is work.
I lived with my grandparents for 2 years. A lot of time we'd get like some pre-cut wood, but like, all right, we'd get out with the splitter. We'd like, okay, we're going to spend like 3 weekends, like just splitting wood all day. You know?
Imagine if you didn't have a splitter. That's
exactly. And that's not like easier. We have the splitter. Like, otherwise we could have just been using axes,
Oh man. It's
would have been like ripped as a 13-year-old if I had just done that, but
it'd have been good for you. Think how
and also we had the tractor that we could just like, toss all the stuff in the trailer in the back of the John Deere and like cart it up to the house. If I had to like lug that back, that would stun.
Oh my God. And people are there. So that neoliberal, that crazy kind of near communism, advocating for throwing ourselves back. Is it based on fear of the environmental catastrophe?
A lot of like the degrowth people, and like they're like, well, in order for humanity to survive, in order for Earth to survive, we actually have to slow down the economy to the point of like returning to simpler times, like in saying like we don't need any of this stuff because like it's bad for the Earth, it's unsustainable, therefore we should be content with less. But like
it's just crazy, bro.
Yeah, no, it's like I disdain degrowthers, and it gets worse too. Like she has a partner thread like, well, people probably wouldn't accept that, so like we need a temporary dictatorship of the proletariat in order for the people to accept that like this is their new reality. Like it's like all their worst fears about like what who's that guy Klaus Schwab.
She's like living it.
Like she says like if that guy like really is secretly harboring that stuff, like I don't know, but like she's saying the quiet part out loud,
she's all in. So this guy, Kevin, check this out. Like maybe before we go, I want to talk about this guy Tom Winter. He's a candidate for state office in Montana. Post a tweet. I caught it right before the show started. He's like complaining about somebody flying a private jet from one city in Montana to another city in Montana, and he's like, I hope it crashes and you die. And like, this is a guy that wants to get elected to be in political office, and it's because of he brings up that it's 97 degrees where he is in Wisalua, Montana or whatever, and some private jet flew in, and he's like, I hope it crashes and you die. And it's like, I hope you don't get elected ever, and I hope this thread goes badly for you.
The people who like say awful stuff like that, all right, man, that's not great.
It was horrible. The comments like bashing him were hilarious though. I love it. Sure. I'm like, but what if it was John Kerry, bud? Like, then what? It could have been John Kerry just city hopping in Montana to check out the effects of 97 degree temperatures,
Yeah, right. Just learning about global warming. It's that's fine. No, but what as a libertarian, I want to go into like inappropriate stuff said on Twitter, because that's a can of worms. No, we're not going there. Then we're not doing that on this show. It's too late.
We got to do it once in a while, but geez, we've got to point our fingers at these clowns every once in a while. Is what I feel,
Not like that.
Well,
there are better ways to do it, Tim.
How else are people going to know just how much they hate us?
Don't give them an excuse.
I know. Honestly, though, the outrage is the new enrage. Like, outrage is the way to popularity. So if we outrage someone and they start attacking us, we have won that battle.
You haven't actually won, though. Like that's not actually winning. There are a bunch of people,
I know.
Libertarian state affiliates specifically, who think that you have won because like the right people have attacked you. Yet you haven't.
Yeah, are you talking about LPNH?
Yes.
Yes. Oh God. That was funny too. Maybe we just do talk about that for a second, because honestly, like I didn't like exactly what they said, but I would say that your response was the only one that I felt was perfectly rational, and you got like one like for it. And I was very disappointed because you nailed the issue perfectly, and I felt like all sorts of people were criticizing LPNH completely irrationally, completely emotionally, and they missed the whole point. Your critique, you should be like the libertarian, like Jesse James or something, because your point was perfect. And all the libertarians are missing it in one direction, all the other libertarians are missing it in another direction. And then Nina Turner garnered a bunch of sympathy, and she worked really hard over the next 2 days to take every shred of that sympathy she garnered and throw it back in everyone's faces. So it was actually kind of beautiful in a way,
No. She's terrible, and like
she's horrible, man. She's horrible.
Not great, like no name, like wouldn't be no, like I know like you like to jump, but she likes to like make people like you mad, right? And like she's kind of generating like she's generating outrage engagement too, like that's
absolutely
what it is.
Sure.
And LPNH decided to do that by saying stuff that is frankly racist. Like
bigoted and
yeah,
but not unlike what she was advocating, right? She would enslave all of us. If she was king for one day, she would enslave all of us to the state for her whims and her wills and her wishes. And arguably that was the point LPNH was trying to make.
They could have made it without being racist. Like they did not have to. Absolutely did not have to make the point in that way. Like,
but
because now like no one sees that, right? Like, and that's why I said it's like they're obtuse and they're alienating in the way that they made their point. And now like most people cannot see that. All they see is like, oh, those guys are kind of being dicks. Like that's all they see out of that situation. Yeah. They don't get the point they're trying to make about like, other than people who are in the tribe who already know the point. If you know the point, you understood the point they're trying to make. If you don't know the point, you just see that they're kind of being jerks because they said that she should be picking crops for free. And they said basically she should go back to her country of origin, basically saying go back to Africa. Like, okay. And now everyone just thinks they're being jerks. And the alien, a bunch of people, they aren't listening to what they're saying. They're not understanding what they're saying. They don't want to try to understand what they're saying. All they see is like, they're being jerks. And there are people like the Libertarian Party of Louisiana who made like the point in a little bit of a better way. Like, hey, let's talk about like how we could eliminate patents on insulin and like
that was really good. And I kind of bashed them at first, but then I thought about it. If they hadn't offered Nina Turner such sympathy, I would have really enjoyed the point that they made. Do you know what I mean? Like, there was a fine line that they crossed with me there, even though their point overall was very impressive. Like, it was really good. Just like your point. You know what I mean? Your point was like impressively set and impressively worded. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm kind of contrarian and anti-establishment, and I'm not sure that at least if I maintain there, I'll get a lot of laughs over the next few years. You know?
Yeah, it's fair. I have no like real sympathy. I think like Nina Turner ended up looking sympathetic because of like the way LPNH approached the situation, rather than like what it should have been, where she looks like a clown, because she has her policies, the stuff she said are total jokes. They're terrible, and they are draconian, authoritarian like policies that are close to, although I will say like this is a whole other show, but like taxation being compared to slavery, I just don't think it's a good comparison. I used to make that comparison. I think it just doesn't hit with people. I think people don't understand it. They don't get it. It's a different thing. And like, even if you can draw the comparison, I think most normal people who aren't already like in the libertarian space, like just tune out when you say that stuff.
So that brings us back to my common question of what is going to make people tune in, because I like what Lars had to say. I agree with everything Lars had to say today. Like I get sense that he's not going to go down the woke wormhole. So I like all of that. And maybe I'm wrong about that, but if he starts lecturing about woke identity politics, I'm going to have a problem with that. And frankly, that's one of the problems I might have with Chase Oliver as it comes down to go time. But like, what's our goal to outreach? Like, how are we going to fix this issue? And Larry does the best job of offering solutions continually. And like, not to be mean, but did his campaign this last time around didn't catch fire, you know?
No, yeah, unfortunately, it's just not what it was, and I don't have the answer to that.
I know, but it's a tough question, and I'm going to keep asking it. And it was I'm going to keep asking everybody that question to the best of my ability, you know? Yeah. Because I want an answer. I want it to be better. I want a success story to come out of this, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, maybe. Or you can just keep fighting on Twitter or X.
And laugh. I do. I mean, I laugh.
That's true. All right. But all right, we should call it a night.
We should. Once again, thanks to Lars. Thanks to you, Kevin, for bearing with me through that slightly disastrous first segment. It was my ears were on fire. I was so embarrassed I couldn't even deal with it. So I got to figure something out, how to make sure my internet is hooked up to my brand new $500 laptop.
All right. Well, have a good night, folks. Take care.